It is thanks to his emotional delivery that a song like this is as successful and as beautiful as it is. I think this is one of the songs that will be part of the Western canon for eons to come. Hello there, girls and boys. We're coming back to Kansas. Yeah, not that Kansas.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
We're coming back to the band Kansas. And yes, I know that was terrible. I take it back. And I apologize for that stupid joke. But the track in question for today's analysis is gonna be the one and only Dust in the Wind. One of those songs that your dad used to play back in the day when you were just a little boy. And probably this time you're kinda tired of it. But I gotta tell you, it's a beautiful track and there is a reason why people love it so much. So we're gonna be analyzing it together. But before we go, if this is your first time in this channel, I welcome you because in here we analyze the music that we love from the perspective of an active musician and professional music producer, but using language that everybody can understand in a way to expand our knowledge when it comes to music production, songwriting, and of course, music appreciation. So, if this is your jam, let's rock and roll. Here we go. So here we go, Dust in the Wind by Kansas.
Close my eyes, only for a moment, and the moment's gone. All my dreams pass before my eyes, a curiosity, dust in the wind. All they are is dust in the wind. Same old song, just a drop of water in an endless sea. All we do crumbles to the ground, though we refuse to see. Dust in the wind. All we are is dust in the wind.
Sorry for interrupting, but you know the drill. First and foremost, what a beautifully and sounding song this is, don't you think? The way that this is mixed, even though this is tiny in scope, we got little to no elements taking or occupying the space of the surf field at the beginning of the track, because we're dealing with two guitars. That's what I was trying to point out at the beginning of the song, because you got one guitar playing on the left, that it's a regular acoustic guitar, while on the right you either have a 12-string guitar or another guitar, acoustic guitar, but rocking what is known, if I recall correctly, the Nashville tuning, which basically speaking, you take the strings from a 12-string guitar, and usually they come in pairs of course, the same string when it comes to the three strings on the bottom of the neck, and the three higher strings, which would be the ones that play the lower pitch keys or notes on your guitar. The double string would be an octave higher. That means that it's basically speaking a little bit higher in pitch. Well, it's twice as high in pitch. Well, the Nashville tuning, you split the strings into two different guitars, giving you this super, how can I put it, wide sounding guitar sound without having to do something crazy with effects and mixing techniques. It's a very, very clever trick. I love to use it when I'm recording acoustic guitars. I might be wrong, but from what I can hear, it sounds like it. Why can you tell that sound is taking place? Once I press play, pay attention to the sound of the guitar coming from your right, in this case, and you'll see that it has a slightly higher pitch than the one taking place on the other side. Also, it's slightly brighter, which shows you that they are completely different guitars. Also, there are points on which they are slightly out of sync, because the performances, even though they are very precise, we as human beings are unable to reproduce the same movement exactly same way twice. Now, the vocals, beautiful, right? Super, super, super beautiful. extreme display of prowess when it comes to the technical aspect of the singing. It's beautifully sang. Every note is perfect pitched, no auto tuned. This is coming from an era in which talent was king still in music, and it shows beautiful performance, full to the rim, filled to the rim with emotion, full of impact, body, and yet mellow and kind of melodical, for lack of a better term, don't you think? So beautiful. Now, this is a very short track, so I'm gonna try to make the most out of every single one of my opportunities to interact with you. So you will see that the voice has not that many effects. You only got reverb, which is the technique or the tool that we use to create the sound of a space through artificial methods, and it's this one, reverb. But the way that it's used in his vocals, it's actually just to put him inside of how can I put it, dreamlike space, don't you think? It's ethereal. It's also soothing to a certain degree, and it's extremely musical. It's done to the tone and the vibe of the track. Make sense? I hope it does, because we got not that many instruments kicking in. Actually, speaking of instruments kicking in, I stopped it at the very point on which we're going to be introduced to a new instrument, which is going to be the violin, which is part of what makes Kansas the great band they are. Great way of using violin in a rock ensemble. And in this track, this is the first track that I actually listened to by Kansas when I was a kid. Of course, because this is probably their biggest hit for obvious reasons, right? It's a beautiful song. But it took me by surprise that they actually had a violin player as a full-time member of the band. I thought that it was just a one-off, like Yesterday from the Beatles, and the cello. It's a cello, right? Yeah. That is a very important part of the sound. So I thought that it was a similar situation when it came to Kansas. But then I realized that no, that guy is a full band member, and it's a quintessential aspect of their music. So let's keep listening to this fantastic and beautiful ballad, and we are going to be discussing next time around the full sound of mix. Here we go.
Now, don't hang on. Nothing lasts forever but the earth and sky. It slips away, and all your money won't another minute buy. Dust in the wind. All we are is dust in the wind. All we are is dust in the wind. Dust in the wind. Everything is dust in the wind. Everything is dust in the wind.
What a beautiful song. I truly can't explain it or describe it in a different way. It's simply beautiful because it's very simple. But it's simple in scope because in reality it's super well crafted. Let's take a look at the screen now. As you can see, the track itself is not bouncing or pounding you with gigantic amounts of energy coming from the frequencies that would be part of the bass or the low range, the low registry. Why? Obviously, we got no kick drum and no bass whatsoever. Most of the energy and most of the information it's coming through the vocals, the acoustic guitar, and some of the string arrangement. That happens not that often. And also at the end, we got that particularly tiny percussion that it's super, super cool. But you'll see that this is clearly an example of how the human voice and acoustic guitars kind of fight for the same space. Is the mid range, and this is where the meat and potatoes is when it comes to mixing music. Most of what we consider to be beautifully sounding in music and sound in general corresponds to this particular section of the spectrum. Why is that? The closer we get to the lower point in frequencies, which is the 20 hertz, which is lowest that we can allegedly hear and understand as sound as human beings, the less intelligible it becomes. And something funny happens. When something is very low in its frequency range, it starts to sound kind of muffled. See what happens right now with my voice. I cut off a good chunk of the highs and mids, and it's sounding kind of like if I put a blanket on top of a microphone, right? Now, the contrary happens when you cut the lows and you are only left with the high end. Because when you do that, you can see right now my voice sounds brittle, kind of weak, and devoid of any form of actual presence or potency to it. I don't know, it's less powerful, let's put it that way. So the effect that those frequencies have on us, as you can imagine, is reflected on at an emotional level. If you got something which is plentiful of low end, you're gonna get pumped because if it's pushed correctly, it gives you energy and excitement. But if it's done incorrectly, it sounds muffled, as an example. And in contrast, if we had plenty of high end, it becomes super ear piercing and very annoying and kind of difficult to listen to. But if it's done correctly, it got plenty of detail, definition, and even a little bit of intimacy to the sound. Now, going back to the analyzer, this track doesn't have that much low end, obviously, and it's not meant to have it because it's not a punchy rock and roll badass track, right? This is a mellow, super introspective sounding ballad. So most of the stuff happens in the mid range, and then you see that the high end is not even that pronounced as well. Why? We don't got cymbals. We don't have a high energy electric guitar so as well. So most of the higher register is kind of covered by some of the notes played by the acoustic guitar and some of the notes or part of the sound of the voice of the singer, which please remind me his name. In this track, he knocks the ball out of the park. Fantastic, just excellent. Now, when it comes to the string arrangement, I think you got a cello and a violin playing together, and they were penned during the section in which were interacting together. You got one instrument playing on one side while the other is playing on the other side, adding an extra layer of depth. And actually, this track is mostly about the great use of the stereo field rather than the bombastic approach to mixing. So it's a one-off, right? It's probably the first time that I actually have a song of this nature in this show. Now let's take a listen. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the second half of the analyzer, which is dynamic range. And in this, oh boy, we're gonna have a blast. Here we go. This is the dynamic range analyzer. For those of you who are familiar with this, well, you know what this is. But for those of you who are new to this channel, this blue blob represents the loudness of a particular or of the sound of the music at a given point in time. The higher it goes, the louder the track was at that point in time. This is the first half of the song. And as you can see, quiet, introspective, intimate at the beginning. But later, here's the vocals. You start to see there is a build-up of energy, a build-up of loudness, but it's sporadic. This clearly shows you the spikes here is the points on which the vocals kicked in. And here you can see that we got the chorus, where we got the extra vocals, once again, playing to the sides of the stereo field, making it more robust and vast in sound. And you can see that it's basically a little bit louder, but never insane. Now, so you can look at the second half of the track. Here's the string arrangement section. And as you can see, it's quieter than the chorus. Very similar in volume, but it's slightly quieter. And also, you can see the beautiful difference between the human voice and the different instruments. You don't see that many spikes and valleys when a legato playing instruments such as the strings take over the mix. Since we don't have percussive elements as well, like drums, we don't have those moments of you can see the hits. That's what I'm trying to say, right? But in here, you can see the line. This is basically the strings playing just legatos. Now, the vocals kick in again, more energy. And here's the when he goes a little bit higher in the register, and the vocal take itself drives and pushes the volume of the sound harder. That's why a song like this relies so much on a great singer such as this one, because it is thanks to his performance, it is thanks to his emotional delivery that a song like this is as successful and as beautiful as it is. I think this is one of the songs that will be part of the Western canon for eons to come. Yeah. So there you have it. This was a little bit shorter than expected because the track itself is more about emotion rather than technical prowess when it comes to the production of the sound. Don't get me wrong. I can't praise the sound of this track enough because, as you saw, I always use the word to describe this track as being minimalist. And in reality it is, because it's basically acoustic guitar and a vocal take. And if I recall correctly, Billy Idol and Steve Stevens once said in an interview that whenever they are writing new music for Billy Idol, they gotta make sure that it works just with the acoustic guitar and the vocals alone. If the track is unable to transmit or promote any form of emotion or evoke any form of emotion on the audience or in the performers, just by its most basic version, it means that the track is not working and they have to do something about it. And I think this is a prime example of why you don't need the flair. For as long as the emotion is true and the intent is clear, this music will speak for itself. So I got it. Thanks for joining, thanks for watching. And if you haven't listened to Kansas, please do yourself a favor and you're gonna love it. They're one of my favorite bands ever. I happen to be a huge rock fan, so of course this is right up my alley. And Dust in the Wind is far from being a proper representation of what they do, because they have so many sounds as part of what they have created. So I strongly recommend you to listen to this album, and also Leftover Tour. That's, in my opinion, their best album. But please let me know which one is your favorite. As usual, if you want to support this kind of content, the best way to do it is by listening to music heavily inspired by Kansas, gotta tell you, on Apple Music or Spotify. But also by following us on Instagram and X, because that's the best way for you to get in touch with us in a much more personal basis. And if you want to keep the conversation going, you can do it by joining our Discord, link in the description down below. Now, as every single time that I meet you, I gotta remind you that you should never let anybody tell you what to dream about. And remember, I will see you when I see you.